So the reason we are making this video is because we have just recently come out of a really hard week going through a miscarriage. And one of the big things that really helped me in the thick of it was remembering specific girls that I knew had experienced one. And I looked and found their archives on Instagram. Whether it was them talking to the camera or just a post or a YouTube video explaining their experience. Watching it just allowed me to grieve, and it didn't make the pain go away at all, but it did comfort me. And I think when you go through it, you really do feel so isolated and alone, especially because no one knew about the pregnancy other than a select few people. And so having those girls to just hear their experience, I felt so understood and kind of allowed me to start the process of processing what was happening in the moment. So here we are.
Really never did any research on this at all.
Well, and when you get pregnant and you think about pregnancy, you don't let your mind go there. The last thing I ever would think to do is research what happens when you miscarry. What are your options? Like, that was something we didn't think we'd have to go through.
Yeah, so Google has been definitely...
Literally, of course, when you're walking through a pregnancy, you're praying and believing and hoping and in faith, believing that your baby's healthy. And that's, of course, where we were. And so we found out we were pregnant on May 2nd. There was the faintest line, but I knew that counted. And so I quickly got all my things together and told him when he got home from work. And you were totally surprised.
Yeah, I have no idea. I just call her kind of to let her know, hey, I'm coming back, I'm coming home from work. And she's got this whole setup coming.
It was really a dream come true and felt so surreal, and was something, I think that was my biggest thing in telling him, telling my family. No one was really aware that we were even trying. And that was just kind of how I wanted it, just like a total out of the blue shock. And I just knew everyone would be so excited. My whole family was so shocked. And so obviously we're only feeling joy at this point. And so we actually had an appointment. We were only 5 weeks at this point. And so he did do an ultrasound, and like I said, it was too early. We weren't surprised by that. Your uterus looks super healthy. Just come back in 2 weeks and, we'll be good. In those 2 weeks, I will say I had a thought of I just want to hear the heartbeat. I just want to see something, of course, like anyone, no matter, if this didn't happen, you still have those thoughts. That's just natural being pregnant. So we were celebrating that whole time, and come to find out 3 of my best friends are pregnant at the same time. And it's how is this even happening? How is this real life? And just celebrating with them and just kind of soaking it all in. So I've been counting down the days to this next appointment because I knew we'd be a little over 7 weeks. The day comes and I wake up to a text from the doctor's office that said that the midwife got sick, and so they were gonna have to reschedule our appointment. This was on a Wednesday, and we were planning on going to Atlanta to tell his family that we were pregnant. And so I wanted an ultrasound. I wanted to check on the baby. I just wanted that confirmation and peace of mind. So I texted them back and I was like, I will see anybody that's available. And they said, we have 1 appointment with this doctor. Do you want it? And I was like, yes, I don't even care. So this doctor comes in. He did an ultrasound, a normal one, and we could see the tiny, tiny baby. And I was like, okay. But he said, if you want to get a closer look and really see the heartbeat, let's do a vaginal ultrasound. And I'm like, ooh, do I want to do a vaginal ultrasound? But
what
at
is
this
that,
point,
Never seen
we don't know
before.
anything. So at this point, I'm like, well, if we can get a better picture of the baby, let's do it. And so he does that, and you could just kind of feel that there was something going on. And at the time, our experience that day, we would have said we were really frustrated with this doctor. Just what he was telling us, which was, baby's measuring a little small, and that's not necessarily something to freak out about. I mean, actually, the friends that I have pregnant and have been pregnant, like, had that experience themselves, which is totally reassuring, and I knew that. But at the same time, we could tell as far as the heartbeat goes, he was just zooming in, and it kind of seemed like he was being optimistic about it. Like, I think I see a little heartbeat, and I think there was one, but it was just really faint. And so, of course, my mind, I'm like, is kind of in shock and not wanting to believe anything is wrong. And he suggests that we get blood work, just in case, to check HCG levels. So at this point, I'm just holding in tears and not wanting to go there in my mind. And, Alex and I come home, and I just kind of had a weird feeling about it all. But of course, we were standing and believing that this baby's healthy and we don't need to worry. Like, I guess what we were saying was, 2 weeks ago, there was nothing. Now there is something. The baby's growing. And that's kind of where we stood that day. So, like I said, the doctor didn't necessarily come out and say you're having a miscarriage, but he did kind of hint at the fact that it could be going in that direction. And then kind of circled back, because we had told him we were going to tell his family that weekend, and he kind of made a comment like, just think about if you want to tell them and then have to tell them a week later that the baby didn't make it. And I was like, one, probably shouldn't have said that, but also in hindsight, I'm thankful, because
grace-wise,
yeah, like, that was a bit of a heads up, because if we hadn't had that appointment that day and what happened, it would have been, totally out of left field. And so it was kind of on our radar.
So from my perspective, coming home, it's just me trying to, as a husband, console this wife who's having this baby, who's in her mind now has this word looming inside, and fighting kind of the fear and the concept of that possibility being even in our conversation.
So that night I came home and I noticed that there was a little brown spotting. I've kind of freaked out, like, what the heck is this? But at the same time, we just told ourselves, well, we just had a vaginal ultrasound. So we thought maybe that could be it. And I actually called the doctor, and she said that totally could be, like, a miscarriage is more like cramping and blood and all that. And I'm like, just like, not even going there still. And so this was still the same day as the appointment. So that night we were in bed, and Alex and I were praying, and he was just praying over my body, and we were just believing and declaring and believing in a miracle, and that everything was healthy with this baby.
Nothing wrong with the baby, that it was just this,
maybe this doctor was
vaginal probe thing that went in there to see it, but not hoping for the best and believing, just declaring, like she's saying, for the miracle that everything's okay and that it will all subside, the next day, and we'll be all right moving forward. So, through all that, we're kind of trying to fight the emotions that are coming up and the grieving that potentially is happening, because we're not sure what's going to happen next, and in that situation, we're just trying to surrender everything to God and let Him kind of work miracles, work outcomes. So we were praying, and I just laid kind of my head down on her stomach and just asked the Lord for a picture of something, to give me a word. And the Lord usually talks to me in pictures, so He gave me an image of what I saw it as a butterfly, and this butterfly had wings that were in the color of rainbows. And yeah, I'm like, okay, this is definitely not me. I don't typically think about rainbow butterflies. I don't think about that on a daily basis. So I'm like, this is definitely from the Lord. So I'm like, Lord, do I share this with Danielle, or is this something that is just for me? And he just says, share what you feel is on your heart for this. And so I kind of laid it out as, this butterfly is kind of in a, to get to a butterfly, you have to have a metamorphosis. You have to have a change inside of something. So it starts as, a bug, and then it ends up as this butterfly. So I explained that to her, and I'm like, I think this means like we're gonna have this butterfly, like we're gonna have the full picture, not just a little, dot.
Yeah.
Not just a little dot on a screen. Like we're gonna have like a beautiful butterfly, aka a baby in my mind. And then the imagery of a rainbow, I asked the Lord what that meant, and he just said, I have the promises still to show you. Trust that I can provide the promises to you. And so that's what my interpretation was, that he's talking to me about. So I'm sharing that with Danielle, and so she has a completely different word come to her.
Yeah, I mean, when he said that, you have to imagine I'm laying in bed bawling. I'm in fight or flight mode at this point, and so like that whole night I had just been starting to grieve, and I was just wanting the Lord to speak something, just to bring comfort, or like, what direction is this going in? Because my mind was just racing. And when Alex said that the Lord showed him a picture of a rainbow butterfly, my mind went to a rainbow baby. And of course I broke down, because in that moment, that was kind of when I knew that was what was happening, because in order to have a rainbow baby, that means you have a miscarriage. And so in a way, it showed me that God was there, that he saw everything, and even though I did not understand why it was happening, it brought me peace and comfort, because at the end of the day, we know that God's plans are good. So that night we just kept like praying, and I actually didn't even share with Alex what I felt like the Lord was saying, but just even the picture of his promises being good and faithful brought me peace. And so that next day he went to work, and I woke up again just crying out for a miracle, and was just kind of lamenting to the Lord and letting it all out. And there was every emotion in the book you can think of, as far as anger, sadness, frustration, questioning, everything. At this point, I was still just kind of brown spotting, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. I'm still in the waiting. You don't know till you know. I think the hardest part in that is in the waiting and not knowing what's really going on in my body. So yeah, it was standing in faith as much as possible, but also believing that God's in control. Of course, we always stand in faith and believe it for life. And the question is, what do you do when that's not the outcome?
Yeah.
And once Alex got home, that's kind of when the signs started to escalate, and I realized, like, okay, this is really happening, and just cramping and all the things that come along with that. And I called him in the bathroom, and
we pretty much just bawled in the bathroom.
And it was like a moment of like, what the enemy means to like destroy us right now. I'm like, no. This is something we're walking through, and it's devastating, but I have to believe, and I do believe, like, God's still good. So Alex came down, and we just bawled, and we're just kind of in shock.
I didn't want to, honestly, I don't think I really wanted to believe it right away.
So at this point, we were kept in touch with my providers, and they said, come in, we'll check your HCG levels the next morning. It was more so a confirmation of what we already knew had happened.
They were prior to the ultrasound, I think around 1,000, like 1,000, and we went back in. They were down in the 200 range. So
the day that everything was kind of confirmed, we came home and we have just been spending time together. But I actually thought to ask him, like, you've heard the phrase rainbow baby, right? And he was like, no, what is that? So I got to tell him, like, hey, when you said the Lord showed you a picture of a rainbow butterfly, that's what I thought of. And so it's just wild how, he didn't even know that was a thing. And the Lord showed him that to speak to my heart along with his.
Yeah, so now we're just resting and recovering. And
the past week, we just wanted to document while it's fresh and on our minds and while we're still processing it. And we just hope that sharing our story can just bring comfort to anybody else that has walked through this or you can remember this video and look back on, which is what I did. And I think, when you go through something like this, that was something that came to me is like, I want to share this to hopefully just help encourage any other girls to know that you're 100% not alone. I think the biggest thing that the enemy would want is for you to feel isolated and like hopeless, and that is not the truth. The fact is, like, sadly, a lot of people experience this, and also a lot of people have incredibly healthy babies after this. And so that's what we're moving towards and believing for. And it's just, peace can only come from knowing that God is good and that He's already written your story. And when you have experiences like this, you can walk through them knowing that He is with you and He's watching everything and in the details, and will turn all of this for good in His time and for His glory, and that His plans for you are good, even if you can't feel that when you're walking through it. But do you want to pray for anybody that might be going through this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just want to pray for those families that are going through a situation similar to ours, and just pray for them to know they are not alone. Just like Danielle said, there is community out there that unfortunately has to experience this type of trauma, and I just pray for the hearts to be filled with peace, filled with joy, even in the midst of a tragedy. That there's supernatural just peace, love, and joy, in a sound mind, one that's strong, and knowing that their faith in the Lord and trust in the Lord is what's coming out, and the fruit of that is going to be abundance. And what I mean by fruit, I think I believe that to be numerous healthy pregnancies, and I just feel that in my spirit, and just to share that with those that have been able to watch this, that is a blessing and a word of encouragement, that even in the midst of a miscarriage, there's so much faithfulness and truth coming out of one. And the blessing that the Lord gives is He may take this away, but He will provide abundancy.
Yeah, and resting in His timetable. And also I just want to speak to the girl. You don't need to be afraid to hope again, and that God knows your deepest desires, and the safest place you can be is in Him, and put your trust in Him and know that He is working and moving behind the scenes.
Going off that as well, just as a husband, I think the biggest thing I wanted to tell my wife, and just as husbands, just letting and ensuring your wife that they've done nothing wrong, is literally out of everyone's control, and they've done nothing wrong. You've done nothing wrong. Wives and husbands, give yourself some grace, even in the...
Yeah, any shame there, you got to kick it to the curb.
That's not from the Lord.
No. Bless you, and if you do want prayer, reach out to us, and we would love to pray with you. And, if you're in a pregnancy and you're battling any fear,
We still love to pray for you.
yes, we hope this blesses you, and